Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Carrie Drinkwine, and I'm the owner and founder of this clinic here, Wise Wellness Clinic, as well as the Institute of Regenerative Health. And really my goal in life is to teach people that there are other alternatives and other modalities to having vibrant health. I always say that suffering is optional and thriving is really our birthright. Our bodies are designed to self-repair when they are given the right environment internally. And so what we do here at the Institute is really teach about the imbalance at the cellular level, the gland and organ level that's happening due to toxicity or acidosis, lifestyle, stress, and really getting to the root cause. And what I want to share about this specifically is in my research and in all the years, some of the things that happen through advanced stressful lifestyles, exposure to toxicity, pharmaceuticals, heavy metals, etc. This is what starts to create cellular damage. And stem cells are not limitless, right? These are produced by the body. And when we get to about 60 years old, we've really depleted the majority of our stem cells that are being produced in the body. And we lose about 10% every decade. Same goes with redox signaling molecules, the ability to put cells through apoptosis and birth a new cell. And so I had started really studying stem cells for a while and trying to understand, how do we get the body to produce its own, which is why this specific company is what I've landed on. I saw so many people doing stem cell injections, snorting stem cells, doing all sorts of crazy things to biohack their health. And I had people spending $5,000 on stem cell injections, not with me, but with other practitioners, and actually not seeing results. Or taking a ton of money to get rid of back pain and did nothing. And to me, how I view it as, it's not your stem cell. It is an invader who knows how your body's going to integrate with that information. And it just never resonated with me to do stem cell injections. So as I started researching how do we activate our stem cells naturally is actually how I found LifeWave and X39 specifically. And so I'm extremely grateful and honored to present to you David Schmidt and, just for what he's doing in the world, his research, his heart, his passion. And I wanted to bring you guys this information as Institute graduates and practitioners. And for those of you that are on here that are not related to the Institute, we decided to just kind of open it up to some extra people because why not bless everyone with this information? And then David, I would love to open it up and present, you and your mission. If you want to explain kind of what got you into this, where's your heart and your passion? And then we'll get into the science and a little bit of time for Q&A.
Well, Carrie, first, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you and your team. And I'm really looking forward to that. And thank you for that very nice introduction. You actually said something that was extremely interesting that I hope we get the chance to come back to. And this is the subject of why the stem cells in the body are not unlimited. Right? Why is there a limit on our stem cell capacity? So I hope we get a chance to come back to that. But my background is I have a formal education in computer science, management, and biology. And when I got out of college longer ago than I'd like to admit, I was designing medical devices. I've been involved in a number of different entrepreneurial ventures. And in the 1990s, I had a development company with a group of people. And what we were doing was designing emergency equipment for submarines through the U.S. Navy, through government contractors. And it was this opportunity that allowed me to pursue a new way of improving energy and stamina in the body without having to use drugs. So a way to wirelessly communicate with the body and induce increased fat burning. And that resulted in our first product, which is LifeWave Energy Enhancer. So since that time, back in 2002, we've done over 80 clinical studies. We, of course, now more than 20 years into research into this phenomena of low-level light therapy, the way that we do it. And about 10 years, over 10 years of research into how to use the technology to improve the activity of stem cells in the body through increases in GHK and AHK. So basically, my personal mission is to offer technologies and products that improve people's health, longevity, and allow people to reclaim some of their youth and stay as young and healthy as long as possible, and give thanks to God along the way, because God's ultimately the creator of all these good things. So I think that's a good summary and a good way to start.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So with that, David, some people are asking if we would be able to stream this through Facebook. How do you feel about that? It's okay if
Yeah,
it's a no.
sure. My
Okay.
pleasure. Sure.
So I'm just going to start that. Why not, spread your mission to the masses? So you guys are welcome to hop on my Facebook and share it from there. Live on stem cells. Okay. We will be live in one moment here. You're all going to get a notification. So thank you for that. And okay, we should be live. All right, wonderful. So David Schmidt just gave us a beautiful introduction to what his purpose and passion is in helping the human body regenerate and repair. And I think although we all age, why not age gracefully and comfortably and really have more time here on this earth? So as practitioners, David, we really wanted to come together to understand how this can be such a supportive methodology for our patients and our clients that we serve here. And what we do is really focus on cleaning up the internal terrain and the environment of the body so that it can have the most optimal level of mitochondrial health, cellular ATP. Obviously, the cells all communicating properly through reductants and oxidants and keeping that alkaline balance in the body. And so we want to kind of hear from you the science of exactly how the patches work and why they work, essentially. So let's start there, and then we'll get into some more of the terrain theory as well.
Yeah, sure. Oh, that would be a great place to start. And actually, the principal area of research that we have here is in mitochondrial function. So I would agree with the mainstream view. What is the mainstream view today, which has changed significantly over the last 10, 20 years, is that by increasing or restoring the mitochondria to more youthful levels, right? When we look at the ratio of energy that we obtain from fat versus carbohydrates, overall output from the mitochondria, what happens to the molecular machinery over a course of time, the impact of oxidative and inflammatory stress on the mitochondria. So essentially, what we're looking for are a number of different signaling molecules like GHK that can restore genes to a more youthful level. And on a biophysical level, I spend quite a bit of time looking at species like lobster that do not age and in fact get younger or stronger as they age, and exactly, what's the mechanism of action there. And that's actually incredibly interesting, because what you see in lobsters, for example, is a code. I would call it the fingerprint of God. But you see a code in lobsters which induces a series of biochemical reactions through photobiomodulation. And these wavelengths of light can be distilled down into a mathematical code. And you see these codes actually, in fact, in the Bible, if you use the original Hebrew. But anyway, that's a little bit off track. So this is all to say that what we look at is how can we use novel forms of light therapy, using light therapy in a way that it hasn't been used before to obtain results that were not obtainable before. So with the LifeWave patches, Essentially, what they do is stimulate the skin with a blend of different wavelengths of light at very, very low levels. And this will induce an improvement in levels of specific peptides in the body. So let's say that we wanted to target glutathione, the body's master antioxidant. This was a product that we came out with in 2006. And so that glutathione patch will stimulate the skin with very low levels of light, a blend of different wavelengths of light. And there's a reaction that occurs where you see first an increase in cytochrome C oxidase. This, of course, is a mediator in the electron transport chain. This improves beta oxidation, so we get an increase in ATP, and then genes are expressed to improve levels of glutathione. And we see this clinically through an increase in elimination of heavy metals like mercury. So you do a urine test and you do a pre and post, and you see levels of mercury going up in the urine. So excretion is going higher. And then blood levels of glutathione, of course, improve within 24 hours of using the glutathione patch. And, we're learning now, even after, decades of research into glutathione, third-party investigators now are still finding new ways that glutathione is improving our health. A study that came out earlier this year, in fact, showed the role between glutathione and stem cells. So it's known now that we know that stem cells are going to be attracted to injury sites because of inflammatory cytokines. But if this is a chronic condition, the cytokines will destroy the population of stem cells. So glutathione is a very important mediator in this regard, in that it's going to normalize the levels of inflammation and allow the stem cells to do their job. So clinically, then you have a patient that has had this chronic injury, they're not healing. Very important step in this is to get the oxidative and inflammatory stress under control, and then that way the stem cells can do their job. Another thing about the patches that make them a little bit different than conventional light therapy is if we think about this in terms of laser communications. So in the military, laser communications has been around for an extremely long time. So we take something like an invisible CO2 laser, and we have a receiver. And if the wavelength of light is not modulated, you simply have white noise, you have a sine wave. But when you modulate that wavelength of light and you put audio information on it, now you can hear someone's voice over that beam of light. This is exactly the same principle that's used with AM and FM radio. We take a sine wave, we modulate it, it contains information, and now we turn on our car radio, and that's of course if we're not listening through the internet or YouTube or something like that, right? Just old AM FM. Then that sine wave is going to get converted over into information that we can hear, someone's voice. So in the patches, this is part of the design, is that not only are we stimulating the skin with low levels of light and a blend of different wavelengths of light, but that light is modulated to contain information to turn on specific receptors like elevating glutathione, or in this case, elevating GHK and GHK-Cu to mobilize and improve stem cell activity in the body.
Amazing. So this is what I love about this is it really is specific to helping the body produce its own. It's activating the body to produce its own. It's not inserting GHK copper peptide, right? It's the light through photobiomodulation is actually activating the body to upregulate GHK copper peptide, which then signals to the body to produce more stem cells, if I'm understanding all of it correctly. So this is in alignment with our path in regenerative health, is really allowing the body to self-repair. And so that's really what I've been most attracted to about your work. And I would love if, the X39 is kind of what we use foundationally in our practice here. And then we start everybody at X39, and then from there, we'll add on some of the other things if necessary. But I would love if you can explain X39 to us and why this is the Holy Grail patch right now. I think if there's any questions, we can kind of save those for the end. So if questions are coming up for you guys, write them down and we'll ask them at the end. But yeah, if you can break down X39 for us. So I understand how the patches work. And if you want to explain like what's actually in the patch as well, I think people will find it fascinating because I don't know that everybody is aware.
Okay, well, there's a lot to unpack there. So let's see, my fundamental discovery with this was that in the 90s, I was developing emergency power generation systems for the Navy. And one of the devices that my team and I were developing was a new type of bladeless turbine. So if we go back more than 100 years now, Nikola Tesla invented a bladeless turbine, and it was discounted as not being very good, but that actually doesn't really turn out to be the case. So we had in this turbine design, we were creating a vortex, and so the turbine would not actually have any blades, and it could run on many different types of fuels, and you could generate a lot of power in a very, very small amount of space. So as an example, a diesel genset, which generates about 75,000 watts, is about the size of your car. And the one that we invented was about the size of a microwave oven. And I was driving home one day. I was we had our research lab in the mountains of Georgia, up in Dahlonega. And I was driving home one day, going around Lake Lanier. And it occurred to me that there must be vortex structures within the human body. And today, I thought of it back then that way, but today I really think more of that through prayer, we're tapping into, let's say, a cosmic consciousness, right? God can give us downloads that hopefully we use for the betterment of humanity. So I was given this download that there must be vortex structures within the cells, and these can be used as a communication conduit. And the way to tap into this would be through stereoisomers of amino acids and sugars. So as an example, we would often think of amino acids as being left-handed molecules, but there are right-handed forms. And we have other things like ribose, for example, which is a right-handed sugar, such as the others. So the thought was to develop a device which could induce circular polarization of light. This would in turn induce a vortex structure above the skin, and this could serve as a communication channel where if we use the right wavelengths of light, we could turn on receptors and turn on specific biochemical pathways. And it took a few years to figure that out, but eventually it resulted in the prototype of the LifeWave energy enhancer. And then later on, through new developments, I was able to figure out how we could use this to synthesize specific peptides like glutathione, carnosine, and GHK. So the patches, what's physically in them would be stereoisomers of amino acids, sugars. There's other compounds. Some of this is proprietary, so we don't get into much more detail than that. But the net end effect is mechanism of action is modulated low-level light therapy. In the early days, the type of things that we were looking at in our clinical research is how do you go about and actually prove that this is working? So we did studies with capnometers so we could measure improvements in beta oxidation, blood, urine, saliva tests. We did a study early on with indirect calorimetry to see that the amount of calories that someone is burning daily using the energy patches that they increase. So that was some of the fundamental research. And then later on, especially when the Eon patch came out, That opened up a number of very interesting doors, I would say. We started working with scientists like Dr. Tom Budzinski, and we looked at what was going on in the autonomic nervous system. And we saw, for example, with the Eon patch, that what it was doing was inducing a response in the body's primitive immune system. And this would result in improvements in not only glutathione, but SOD. And we saw that if someone was, let's say most people, of course, are going to be in a sympathetic drive, what would happen is that they would go into a balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic within seconds of applying the Eon patch. So clinically, we definitely recommend today that people start with X39. But in terms of when people suffer with conditions, let's say any type of acute or chronic pain, you can apply the X39 patch to the back of the neck and then use a patch like glutathione, like Eon, like Ice Wave. They're all subtly different. So it depends on what the patient has. But you can use these tools, and within 2-3 minutes, you can get 50% to 100% relief of pain. So those are some very practical things that we found over the years with the products. But it all starts with this idea that we're going to use stereoisomers, process them in a very specific way, stimulate the skin with low levels of light. And this is going to turn on energy production in the cell, upregulate specific peptides like GHK and glutathione, and that's going to have a number of significant beneficial effects. So maybe I'll stop there for a moment because there might be some questions around that.
Sure, absolutely. So does anybody have any questions of what David just answered? So I will just recap a little bit in our work. We work with, nutrition and herbalism, which have high angstroms of energy, right? That are then helping the cell and the mitochondria have a high yield or ATP output. But outside of that, things like light therapy, we've all heard of red light therapy and how it's beneficial to even repairing layers of the skin. So this is like a constant low frequency of light therapy, if I'm understanding it correctly. My question would be, and I think some people's other question is in the back of their mind, does this ever develop a dependency by the body? Or if you stop wearing the patches, is there any sort of side effect where the body steps, we have a philosophy here, if you take it, you won't make it. So like, we don't take digestive enzymes, we want our gut to be able to produce them. And so populating the gut microbiome through things with like, soil water essentially, and fruits and vegetables and things that are repairing the gut versus taking an isolate. Or taking a thyroid medication, your body's not going to, make TSH because there's an efficient amount. So we work on stimulating the body, working on the pituitary gland, working on the communication in the HPA axis in order to get the thyroid to start responding to the command of the pituitary. And so that's how we work here. So my question from regenerative side of things would be, are there any contraindications whatsoever to constantly having a low level of frequency moving into the body with your body's own production of GHK copper peptide? And, some of the, I've been looking at how it works with NRF2 pathways and all of the different things that are happening in the body where we see gene mutations from damage and all of that, which is part of why I've brought this in is, we know that over 4,000 genes are reset by, almost instantaneously. So if we can touch on one, is there a dependency that can happen or any contraindication? And two, what is happening on the gene level on expressions of genes once applying the patches?
Okay. All right. Yeah, there's a lot there to talk about as well. So the first thing is we target peptides and mechanisms that normally decline with age. And I would absolutely agree with the statement that you made is that we don't want to create dependencies. So this would differ significantly from something like hormone replacement, where we give people human growth hormone or testosterone, and then their bodies are forever dependent on that, right? So this definitely is not that. So the idea here is we want to look at peptides that would normally decrease with age, and then communicate with the body and activate the correct pathways so the body can start making these peptides again. And GHK is perhaps the best example because it has such a profound effect on our health through modulation of the inflammatory process, mobilization of stem cells, as well as other pathways. So yeah, the first thing, the body is not going to develop a dependency on this the way we would think about it, because we're simply sending a signal to ask the body, activate this pathway and elevate GHK. So your body is still going to make GHK if you remove the device, but at let's say older levels. So what does that mean? Let's say you take someone that's in their 60s. We know their levels of copper peptide are down perhaps 60 to 80% as compared to where they were in their 20s. Now you apply X39, and now the levels are going to go up 30 to 40% within the first 24 hours. You remove the patch, and then the GHK levels over time, because of the half-life, are going to go back down to where they were in your normal biological age of 60 to 80. So it's very different from hormone therapy in that regard. It's not going to shut down your body's ability to make this peptide. I think some of the other things about that would be pretty important that goes along with dependency would also be accommodation or adaptation to a response, because this would be something that we would see in normal light therapy. So a good analogy to this would be caffeine. So someone takes caffeine, they initially get a hit from it, they get an improvement in energy, they feel awake, but then they go back the next day, they have another 100 milligrams or 80 milligrams of caffeine. They don't get quite the same effect over the next couple of days, and then they find they have to increase the dosing in order to get the same response as at the lower dosage. Light therapy is similar in the sense that if you constantly give someone stimulation of light, eventually the body stops responding. So what we found over many, many years of study was that if you applied the patches for a period of 12 hours and then you remove the patch, you could avoid this adaptation. So that's why we have the instructions: put them on in the morning, take them off at night. If someone forgets and they leave them on, for 24 hours, then they can just take a day off, and then they can start using the product again. So, yeah, this is all to say that what we're doing is looking to restore peptide levels back to more youthful levels. And as long as that's done with an on and off cycle, then a dependency doesn't occur, and also the patches will continue to function.
Beautiful. Brilliant. So that is exactly what I have been feeling. And so one of my questions on that is you explained, so while the patch is on, obviously we're activating this pathway to upregulate. Now, another thing that I've heard throughout is essentially around 1 month per decade of life is really the time that you want to be on these patches as a minimum, right? So outside of that, so what's happening? So if it's 1 month per decade of life, and we're essentially regenerating that many stem cells, say you've been on the patches for 6-8 months, is your cellular age that much younger? Or as soon as you take off the patches, is it going to downregulate back to your biological age?
Yeah, so there is, what I would say with that is, I don't think it's quite that simple, because it's compounded by not only age, but is the person taking a pharmaceutical drug? What is their lifestyle habits? What's their diet? What's the level of exercise? So as an example, here would be a really good example, actually, is when we look at the leading cause of death, that's going to be heart disease. So atherosclerosis kills approximately 19 million people per year globally, somewhere around in that range. And we absolutely know today what the risk factors are associated with heart disease. The interesting thing about this is that medical doctors are trained in interventions of drugs, yet by far exercise is the single most important thing that we can do to maintain the health of our heart, and dietary intervention at reducing accumulation of arterial plaque. So what I would say is that the effects of the patches on the body are going to be greatly dependent on, is someone a smoker? Do they drink excessively? Are they overweight? Do they exercise regularly? What is their diet like? Do they supplement? So all of these things are going to impact the results that people get. So generally speaking, the better health that someone is in, the better the results. In our blood tests, to get back to your question, because that was a little bit of an aside, in our blood tests, what we see, and I can share screen and show you some of these references, is that within the first 24 hours of applying X39, we see statistically significant improvements in GHK and GHK-Cu. So going back to 2018, we did a pilot study. It took us about 18 months or so, all told, to get this pilot study done, because the techniques for measuring GHK and GHK-Cu were not readily available. We had to go through two separate laboratories to develop these protocols. And so, you can't walk into like a LabCorp and get your GHK levels tested. So that was kind of the first challenge. But then, as we got into our pilot, just with 10 people, we got statistically significant results. And then we repeated that study several times with populations of 50 people and 60 people in studies. We later then went on to do urine testing because we wanted to see what were the metabolic effects. We then did studies with multi-channel EEG to look at, okay, let's see what's going to happen in the brain over a period of weeks of using this. So, and then anecdotally, we started to receive before after photos from people in our community saying, hey, I've been using this and look what happened to my skin over a period of 2-3 months. So when you apply the patch and we take a baseline test of GHK and GHK-Cu, we can see to statistical significance, let's say it goes down to 0.003, 0.002 on a p-value, that both of those peptides are increasing, and they increase by about 30 to 40%. We test a week later of daily use of the patch, 12 hours a day. And again, after a week, we see that those peptide levels are still increased over baseline. So the patch goes to work right away. The urine testing is very telling because once the copper peptide levels get improved, then when are we actually going to start to see that this is having an impact on the body? Within 24 hours, we see improvements in levels of GABA. And this correlates with our sleep index. So the feedback that we get with clinically relevant questionnaires is, hey, within 24 hours, my sleep is improving. So we see that statistically, and we see why it's happening. Within about the first week, we would see improvements in short-term and mid-term memory. We see within the first 7 days improvements in synthesis of amino acids, and that begins to tell us what the product is doing. For example, we would see statistically significant improvements in the amino acid tryptophan as well as leucine. So this makes sense then that when we have athletes come back to us and say they're getting stronger, faster, they're recovering more quickly after exercise, that lines up very nicely with the urine data because the increased synthesis of leucine must be turning on mTOR. Looking several weeks past that, when we use multi-channel EEG, it's about 3 weeks to where we see statistically significant improvements in cognition. So as opposed to looking at this as, what is the impact on longevity? Can you mark that month by month? I think, yeah, for the first indicators are look at the changes in blood, look at the changes in urine, what's going on with metabolism, and then doing measurements of different organs in the body to see, are they performing at more youthful levels? And, the answer is yes. The gene mapping studies is something that Dr. Picard has done that we haven't done because it borders on then making a claim that we're a medical device. So I'd say there's studies that we've done that we don't share publicly because we're concerned the FDA would say, well, you've got a drug or a medical device there. So we have to stay within the claims of being general wellness.
Beautiful. Okay, so what we always say here is if you do what you've always done, you're going to get where you've always been, essentially. So you can wear the patches, you're going to improve while you're wearing the patches. After, it's going to be up to your lifestyle to maintain. Now, what I teach my students here is, it is so cost effective. To me, I do not think this is expensive at all. I think to be able to regenerate your stem cells and build the body to this level for, practically $100 a month is insanity. Because I work with people that come in getting $5,000 stem cell injections on the regular. And so my question now for you is, I want to take just a moment to talk about, not everybody here is students, I think. So not everybody also knows the levels of GHK copper peptide and what it's doing. So the deep research that I've done on GHK really talks about the multiple biological regenerative actions that it has. Like, it really is a regenerative peptide, and it helps in so many ways, like stimulating blood cells and new nerve growth and collagen and elastin, and the list goes on and on. Suppression of fibroblasts in the lungs and getting rid of COPD. It helps with the NFKB, peptides, like all the things that a lot of people don't even know what that means, but it's essentially working on depression, anxiety, DNA repair, protein synthesis. And these are things that we can't claim, obviously. We're not going to make any medical claims, but this is the nature of GHK copper peptide. So my question to you is really about this peptide. Whoops, sorry, I almost muted myself. My question to you is really about this peptide, is the benefit more so that we're upregulating GHK copper peptide, which then is producing stem cells, but which is the more benefit, or is it symbiotic? So what the stem cell is doing versus what the GHK is doing, if that makes sense.
It does. I would say that over the next maybe 5 to 10 years, the way that we look at nutrition and health should change very significantly. So if we go back to, in some ways, I'm a product of the 70s and 80s because that's when I was a young kid. And I started doing research, looking at books like Life Extension by Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw. The methodology back then was, let's take megadoses of certain nutrients like arginine and ornithine for increasing human growth hormone, right? Let's take megadosing of vitamin C. So those things work, right? But they're the methodology philosophy that's being used is that we have to use these type of interventions to compensate for the effects of time. So good example is when we look at activating mTOR. As we age, what we want to do is retain our strength, our muscle mass, our bone density. And by the way, when we look at disease prevention, a very strong indicator now clinically of how rapidly someone's aging and whether or not they are reducing their risk of disease is their VO2 max, their strength and stamina, muscle and bone density. So again, this is going to come back to things like proper diet, sleep, and exercise are going to be the single best tools that we have for preventing these diseases, right? And then we use technology like LifeWave to get results much more faster. But going back to this point, when we look at what the methodology has been, that we need to be taking all of these nutrients and in some cases, taking very high doses, this is to compensate for the effects of time. Because the cells in the body are shrinking, and now we need to get more nutrients to get them in, and mitochondrial function has declined. So the future, though, for our industry is, I think, very, very different in the sense that this really now becomes a matter of epigenetics and what type of signaling molecules can we use, like GHK, to reset the genes and restore them to a more youthful state. Now we've changed the paradigm. If we can use peptides like GHK and GDF11 would be another really good example where there's some good science behind that, GCMAF, and we can use these peptides, and now the cells start acting and behaving like younger, healthier cells. So using nutrients strategically like acetyl L-carnitine and lipoic acid to help support overall mitochondrial health, using methods to improve oxytocin, because we know this is going to reset the muscle tissue to a more youthful state. This, I think, is really where everything is heading. So the power then of GHK starts with its ability to reset thousands of genes, about over 4,000 genes, to a more youthful state. So this is probably the single most powerful epigenetic factor, epigenetic peptide that's known today. If we were to compare this to something like olive oil or resveratrol, we're talking about turning on one or two sirtuin genes. And of course, they have very powerful effects, but it's meager compared to GHK. So I would say this is, after maybe 50 years of research, this is the conclusion that Dr. Picard came to, who discovered GHK, is that he was seeing all these effects that you pointed out. And it ultimately comes back that GHK is first and foremost going to start to reset genes. And there are some genes, of course, that turn on that are supposed to be off, and then there's others that are off that we want to turn back on as a result of time. So that happens first. Then the metabolism starts to improve. The regulation of inflammatory markers starts to improve. P63 gene is activated, so now stem cells can mobilize. And we even see that GHK acts as a Yamanaka factor and can revert the stem cells in the skin back over to pluripotent stem cells. So now we can even see an increase in the number of circulating stem cells. So this is a very long way of saying that the power of GHK is ultimately in being able to restore genes to a more youthful level. And this has the net end effect of improving stem cell activity, helping to regulate the inflammatory process, and even increasing the number of circulating stem cells. So now the body can do what it's designed to do. I think that answered your question.
It did. So it's like a byproduct. Essentially, they work together, but I think like the GHK, all the research that I've done on GHK copper peptide is also the activation of the NRF2 signaling pathway. It's mediated through this copper peptide, and it actually causes like a redox cycling, and it helps the body adapt to oxidants. We know we talk about reductants and oxidants in balance, and we work with redox here as well. And so it actually helps upregulate the antioxidant mediated response of the cell. And that essentially is going to create a resistance to disease. We can't make any scientific claims, but really strengthening the cell membrane itself, essentially, and correcting this pathway where we start to see so many people with MTHFR and all of these gene mutations. And the thought process behind it is, well, I have MTHFR, so I don't detox well. So I'm curious if you can speak to that. And how the patches might be efficient for people that are dealing with gene mutations such as MTHFR or others that you might want to discuss.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually. When we go, that's interesting. I think what I'd say is for gene mutations, so far they're the type of tools that are available are things like CRISPR, right? Gene editing, and that really hasn't made its way mainstream. And that in and of itself is pretty scary because there's 100 different things that could go wrong with it. So I'm not necessarily a fan of that. So then clinically, the question is, what can we do to improve quality of life for people who are having these kind of issues? Glutathione might be a really good example. Because to your point, what happens is, let's say that we have someone that's on a supplement of NAC, they have generally a clean diet, but they completely lack the ability to make glutathione. If we look at the biochemistry and the steps that are necessary for make glutathione, there's an enzyme that's required in the first stage, and this is ultimately what some people lack. So a way to obviate that is to supplement with something called glycine. And glycine then directly converts over into glutathione. Where the patches are helpful is that it helps to maintain the body's levels of glutathione. We're not going to be able to, of course, get any cysteine in our body through the patch. We have to do that through diet or through supplementation, but the patches can keep the glutathione levels elevated. But in specific cases of gene mutation, the type of things that I look at are, okay, how can we bypass some of the problems in the biochemistry? In the case of the detox pathways, then I look at compounds like glycine, which will directly convert then over to glutathione. So if someone's missing that enzyme, doesn't matter.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I appreciate you answering all of my clinical questions. And so I think that the last thing I would love is if there's any studies or anything that you want to share, you have the ability to share your screen. But for us, I mean, I think there's nobody that the patches can't help, right? And I've recently been on X39, just added X49. I'm 40 years old. I have 5 children, and I can tell you that my athletic performance has never been what it is as it is right now. I'm deadlifting like crazy amounts of weight and doing hot yoga and an hour of weightlifting and a 3-mile run pretty much 6 days a week. And I have small children and multiple companies. So I think I'm a testament to what it's doing inside my body. And I just ran into a friend that was like, I swear you are reverse aging. And so the work works to be non-clinical for a moment. But I just want to speak to any of the clinical research maybe that you feel compelled to share, because I think that's where everybody's like wants to know, how do you show that it's working, that it's regenerating? Because so many people have said to me, this is one thing, I either have people that have immediate results. They're like, I'm already sleeping better. I feel better. I have more energy. I had one woman say like, I feel like I'm Superwoman on day 3 of these patches. And then I've had somebody say it's been 2.5 months, I feel nothing, right? And so I always ask them, how much water are you drinking? How's your diet? What are you doing, right? Because we can advance the results through how we live. But what do you say to that? Like, how do you know what's happening internally if somebody really isn't feeling it per se? I mean, my response is maybe you're just not super in tune to your body, or the body is activating stem cells, but they're going to the place that it's needed the most first, right? You know, I always say like in certain ways, we might be looking at symptomology, that's what's in the mirror, but we don't know what's in the closet. And, you know, the stem cells might be going to what's in the closet first, because it could be a causation of what's in the mirror. So it might just take you longer time to see those results because the body is repairing the highest priority first. And I know that that happens in some of the other modalities that we work with. So I'm just curious if you have what your answer would be to somebody that says that they don't feel it. And then number two, is it like that where it goes to specific areas that need it in order of priority?
Yeah, so that answer is simple, yes. And there's an easy way to measure that, actually. Everything that you just said about that is completely true. So the way we measure it is through infrared imaging and through blood testing. So these are two of the favorite tools for me that we have when we do studies, because the blood testing, we're going to be able to see what are the inflammatory markers that are high. So we'll test for C-reactive proteins, inflammatory cytokines, fibrinogen, homocysteine, lipid peroxides. So we check for these things. And then we use infrared imaging to see where is the inflammation in the body. And invariably, you'll have people use the patches and say, well, I've had the shoulder problem and I used the patch for a month and I didn't notice anything. But then they'll come back and say, you know what, I had this back problem for many years and now the back problem's gone. So it was to that point, is that the stem cells, what's going on inside the body? This was discovered at Sanford Burnham in La Jolla, California, that the stem cells are attracted to the inflammatory cytokines. And if we think about an injury, we would normally think of the chemistry as something harmful, when in fact it's the way the bodies are healing. So let's say that someone suffers an injury to their knee. First, we're going to get an increase in oxidative stress. Well, the oxidative stress is actually very good because it will decrease the risk of bacterial infection. By the way, copper, as long as people get enough copper in their diet, that goes to the site of the infection, and that dramatically reduces risk of infection. Then we release inflammatory cytokines. Well, that's a good thing because it's going to attract stem cells and it's going to tear down the damaged tissue and make way for new cells. That way the stem cells can go in, they can upregulate collagen production, and the healing process begins. So the challenge, though, is as people age and their antioxidant system becomes depleted, now the inflammation isn't managed and the stem cells can't do their job. So you use a product like X39, and as you increase GHK, it mobilizes stem cells. Stem cells are going to look at, well, where we needed the most. Here's all of this inflammation in the lower back. Let's go there first. There's a limited number of resources. This is where the other questions come in. Is someone using pharmaceutical drugs? What is their resources in terms of daily protein and essential fatty acids? Are they exercising? Are they drinking enough water? That's where all these things become important, because it has an impact on how quickly people are going to heal. So we can measure all these things, but as a practical matter, that's really what we see. So in terms of studies, let's see if I pull up some of these things. Yeah, if we go to the research section of the website, we have this broken down by product, and you can click on any of these studies here, and it will send you over to links. But this was an example of a study that we did, and this was one of the early studies that we did as a pilot. We did it with 10 people. And as I mentioned, it took quite a long time to develop the methods for actually detecting GHK and GHK-Cu. With X49, AHK is incredibly difficult to detect. AHK-Cu is a little bit easier. But in any case, right from this very first study, we saw statistically significant improvements. We then went on to do this other study. Let's see, on this one, this was a study with 50 people. And generally, we use populations over the age of 60 because that's the group where we're going to see the largest decreases in GHK. So then we would expect to see changes in that group. If we don't see changes in that group, we're not going to see changes at all. But again, here, we're looking at urine study, and we hit statistically significant improvement. In some cases, such as short-term memory, the p-values are very, very low. So this is where we get to say, okay, you're elevating your GHK. Is this going to be similar or better or worse than injections of GHK? And after all these studies that we've done, my opinion based on these studies is that this is actually far better than using an injection of GHK because this keeps the copper peptide levels elevated through constant stimulation. And then, of course, we did after the pilot study, the blood study that we did a double-blind test. And this was with 60 people, I believe. And this, again, was showing that we were getting increases in GHK and GHK-Cu after 24 hours and after 1 week. And then you've probably seen some of these things, but what I would recommend for people that really want to dive into this, there's any number of good published studies on the effects of GHK and stem cells. For example, one of the really interesting things is what's known about GHK is that it is a very high affinity for binding with copper. And what's important about that is that copper influences whether or not a stem cell stays as a pluripotent stem cell, or whether or not the stem cell will differentiate into more specialized tissue. So GHK plays a role in that process. So in other words, copper, the presence of copper can induce the ability of stem cells to go from a pluripotent state to a multipotent state, and then GHK can sequester that copper and mediate the process. So this is explained in this paper. There's also other studies which are going to show some of the benefits of using copper peptide that you were talking about before. And here's a nice summary, but ultimately all of these benefits are coming back to gene modification, right? Being able to restore genes to a more healthy state. And then we also see, I think I'd mention this study because one of the things that copper peptide is best known for is in use topically. So for many years, maybe since the 70s, GHK was added to different skincare formulas, and this was shown to reduce fine lines and wrinkles, speed wound healing, and of course, have an influence on collagen production. So this is a good study for those interested about why that all occurs. So what I would say is that there's quite a bit of really good clinical data on the benefits of GHK, and we have a library of studies to validate first that the patch is increasing GHK and GHK-Cu, and then demonstrating what those benefits are, whether or not they would be in improving cognition or improving strength, stamina, and overall wellness.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Okay, so I know I want to honor your time. So if this is the end of your time, I would like we can close. Otherwise, the last question that people had is wondering if you can do a quick run through on the differences on the patches and where you put your focus. Now, we've been taught kind of focus on X39 because it's all of the patches in one. But as practitioners, we are kind of working with people who have like dementia and Alzheimer's or, just different conditions. And we always like to be the most efficient as possible. So maybe just we have like the regular sheet, but a little bit of a deeper understanding maybe of a run through on the patches if you have the time.
Yeah, no, I can take a few more minutes. You said just make one comment. So I turned 60 this year. And when in 2018, let's see, when I was 55, I wanted to find out what my body was capable of with X39. And so, and this is kind of going to be, an important segue and underscore some of the other things that we're talking about. So first, what I wanted to do was see how far I could push my body physically at 55 in my mid 50s. And so I wanted to make sure that I was getting enough protein. So I structured my diet. So I get about 200 grams of protein per day because I was weighing about 195, 200 or so about at that time. Made sure I was getting enough rest, drinking enough water, all those things, which I was generally doing anyway. And then I started to hit the gym, and I do about maybe 30 minutes of warm up with walking, running, stretching, and then about an hour of weight training. And I did this for a number of months. And maybe about after 6 months of this or so, I would go in the gym, and on an ordinary day, I'd be doing about 90 pull-ups. 89 pull-ups was at my peak. I was doing about 400 push-ups in a workout, and I would do let's say a one-arm row with 85-pound dumbbells. And I was training with some fellows that were Marines. This was in San Diego. And I had a fellow approach me one day, and he said, he was about my age, and he said, hey, guys our age aren't supposed to train this heavy. And I said, well, that's the problem. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, I don't think I'm our age. So, it's all really a matter of mindset and perspective. So this is to say that I would encourage people not to sell themselves short about what they're capable of, and getting your diet and exercise in place, using technology like the patches. People can achieve things that they might normally think they can achieve. So to segue into the conversation, let's take something clinically like pain. Many people have the mindset that they're stuck with dealing with pain, maybe for the rest of their life. They get into their 40s or 50s and they say, well, I've got this condition and I'm kind of stuck with it, so I have to live with it. And that's really the furthest thing from the truth. So if we deal with pain, let's say that we're going to, let's use Parkinson's disease as an example. So what we would see through our experience would be, first, we can reduce the impact of the symptoms immediately. And this was even before X39. We would do this with one set of ice wave patches on the bottom of the feet, where we recommend them at the for acupuncture. It's the kidney 1 acupuncture points. And then we would apply a glutathione patch directly over the belly button. Today, I would definitely use X39 on the back of the neck. But we know now, very well established, that Parkinson's disease is always associated with depleted levels of glutathione. Glutathione is neuroprotective. It protects the myelin sheath from degeneration. And yeah, we can get some improvements in Parkinson's by using IVs of glutathione, but glutathione is a half-life of 7 minutes. So those benefits are not going to stay around very long. So using a technology like the patch, we can keep the glutathione levels elevated. And we see all the time that a person's symptoms such as shaking, low energy levels, general fatigue and weakness, those things start to get under control and improve just by using ice wave and glutathione. So if there is, if you want to, with respect to cognition, so let's say, since we don't want to make any medical claims, let's just talk about cognition. So we know that if we speak in terms of normal age-related decline, how do we deal with that? Well, we know the brain actually physically shrinks And we can reverse that to a degree with supplementation of essential fatty acids, increasing DHA, and any number of good supplements on the market for that. Algae oil, for example, happens to be very rich in DHA. The other thing that we'd want to do clinically is increase antioxidants such as carnosine. So I see a very consistent trend with metabolism of alanine and brain-related health disorders, such as Lou Gehrig's disease, right? ALS, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. So I think a very important area of research is the use of beta-alanine supplementation for the purpose of increasing AHK and carnosine, maybe some other peptides, in helping to manage the inflammatory response in the brain. By the way, back in early as 2010, we did a clinical study with 2 PhDs on the use of carnosine in reversing age-related cognitive decline, and that was quite successful. It took 1 month on the carnosine patch to do that. So there's certainly other therapies. I have about over 70 patents on the use of pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, and I would say that's extraordinarily valuable in treating different types of degenerative diseases that would affect cognition. Of course, we have a study on the use of X39 in improving cognition. So I would say that if someone was using X39 with the carnosine patch, that would be a very, very good approach to help manage cognition, along with a program of supplementation.
And do you have specific supplements that you would recommend for that? Or just sort of beta-alanine support and making sure they're getting enough copper in their diet?
Yeah, beyond that, beyond fish oil, beta-alanine, copper. Actually, one thing I might recommend is creatine. And creatine, is often thought of as a supplement for bodybuilders, but actually, it mediates energy transfer in the body. And, other than the muscles, two of the biggest users of energy in the body are going to be the heart and the brain. So there's some studies that are not well known that show that supplementation with creatine, in fact, can improve cognition. So and the reason I mention it is because it's extremely inexpensive, and it has a whole host of benefits. So yeah, I would say that beta-alanine, creatine, copper. Another supplement that I think is probably worth mentioning might be nattokinase. And the reason I mentioned nattokinase.
If you're on mute, please mute. I'm just going to mute everybody real quick, David.
Yep.
Okay, now unmute yourself. Go ahead now.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I think another supplement that I'd mention would be nattokinase. We have a study that's upcoming on this. So we did, let's see, I want to be careful how I say this, but we did 2 studies on people that had been vaccinated with the mRNA vaccine. And we did these studies because we needed to be able to say that if someone had been vaccinated, that the patches were safe for use. So this was with X39. And we did this study with a medical doctor. He is a forensic MD, and he's been an expert witness in over 250 court cases. And what we found was really alarming. It was basically anyone that had had the mRNA vaccine, let's say 4 months after vaccination, they still showed elevated levels of fibrinogen, elevated white blood cell count, and also mutations in the white blood cells. And one of the things that's going to help to resolve this is supplementation with NAC, and nattokinase helps to dissolve the spike protein. So we're entering into now kind of a new era. And when we're looking at clinical data, we need to look at it pre-COVID and post-COVID. What we see is that outcomes of studies post-COVID are very different than prior to COVID. And this is because of the lingering spike protein and the damage that it's doing to the cardiovascular system. So I would recommend anyone that was vaccinated or anyone that had COVID or anyone that wants to prevent getting COVID, that they be on nattokinase and NAC.
That is super helpful. Thank you. Because we are super focused on how do we get this out of people's body. Clinically speaking, I actually retired because from taking patients after the pandemic, because I was so burnt out with how much trauma we were seeing here. I've never been 9 months backed up, on critical cases, children's. We got to be careful what we say here, but, perfectly healthy mothers getting the thing during pregnancy and then having a stillborn inside of them. And multiple, we had heart attacks, myocarditis. We have one person that is paralyzed legs down after. So we've been working really, really hard at restoring this. And part of our protocol is actually capturing through a really powerful zeolite and really helping pull it out of the body. But in addition, this is so helpful. So I guess what we would say is you would say foundation of everybody should be X39 as the foundation. And then if you're dealing with neurological conditions, the carnosine and the glutathione are probably the best additions, if I'm understanding fully, or?
I would say if someone was using X39 and carnosine or glutathione during the day, they would use the Eon patch at night. And that would be a really simple, very effective combination of products for improving and supporting overall wellness. And again, because we live in, let's say, a post-COVID world, I might use supplements of sulforaphane, NAC, copper, nattokinase, taurine is something we didn't really get a chance to talk about, to resolve any potential issues with the spike protein, and also some of the things that are coming down the line, such as mRNA making its way into our food supply through beef and now even so this is going to require, I'd say what this is going to require that we introduce new technology that can protect people in a way that wasn't necessary before. And that will be something I'll be talking about quite a bit next year as we unveil some new things here at LifeWave for our 20th anniversary.
Very, very exciting. Well, I really just want to honor you and thank you. I'm sure we could talk to you all day. I see lots of comments in the chat, but I know that this is very special that you don't do this because, you're a very busy, high in demand person. So I just want to thank you for your time and your commitment to this research. I myself clinically, it's part of actually why I opened the Institute in the pandemic, because I was one person going down. And I realized that we needed to spread this information to the masses. And so we have hundreds of graduates now. We have about 250 graduates in our first year and a half here. And so we are hoping to continue to spread this information to the masses. And we would like to just be really precise with our protocols and integrating LifeWave into all of our protocols. So I just want to thank you. You don't have to hang out any longer. I mean, I'm sure everybody's asking questions about cancer and what kinds of patches. I think that we have to be careful clinically speaking of any claims. So everybody here, LifeWave doesn't claim to treat or cure any disease, period. We are simply helping the body miraculously repair itself. We're helping the body get into an environment where it just figures out how to do what it's supposed to do. And I want everyone to be compliant with that and just really watching that, what you say as well, because we want to protect the company of LifeWave. And what you're doing, David, is just truly incredible. So with that said, I would say if you want to answer a few questions, you can. Otherwise, we can let you get
I
to.
think I need to drop off.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay.
Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much. Yep. Everybody have a great day.
Thanks,
And I
everyone.
will meet you in person on next week.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Bye.
Bye now.
All right. Everybody else, you can hang out for a few minutes if you'd like to.
I have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
I was told that the stem cells can release or build or provide the ability for the cartilage in the joints. That is my severe request of my body is what I'm looking for. And I was told by a couple people that told me about the company that stem cells are capable of rebuilding or creating new or repairing cartilage.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll answer that from a clinical perspective. So every single part of your body is made of cells. So you have around 75 plus trillion cells in your body in two fluids. You have a blood system and you have a lymphatic system. Every organ, every muscle tissue, every epithelial cell, it's all cells. So what it's doing is you have a level of damage to your cells, and diet is massive. So number one, changing your diet to a more alkaline forming diet, more plant-centric diet is going to help you immensely with reducing inflammation and cellular damage. So that's something you can do on your own. And then adding the stem cell patches and plenty of hydration is simply going to start to repair cells, and the body will go in area of priority of where it needs to be. So if you're restoring and repairing connective tissue cells, you will have connective tissue repair. It may not happen in a month, depending on your age. I would say plan for 6 to 9 months, but the body is restoring and repairing itself. And that in conjunction with hydration and a more plant-centric diet, a plant-focused diet, and organic is very important, because the reason that we are having so much depletion in the body is because of toxicity. We're exposed to so many toxins and chemicals in the environment, in our food. Glyphosate is a neurotoxic pesticide that tears apart the gut microbiome and causes a lot of damage to our body and our cells. So I'm a huge advocate for focusing on your living foods to create more vitality and life force in the body. So that plus the patches, I would do X39 and X49 together if your goal was connective tissue.
And would this be the X39 and 49 at the beginning?
Yeah, so you could start with just X39 if that's more appropriate for 30 full days, and then you could add the X49. So I always recommend that everybody comes in with the silver package or above, which the silver package allows you to get that wholesale pricing. It's $299 for 3 sleeves, which is so affordable. Otherwise, it's $149 per sleeve as a retail customer. So you can customize those 3 sleeves. I would recommend doing maybe 2 X39s and 1 X49. That way your first month you have X39, your second month you have X39 and X49, and then you're getting ready to make your next purchase. And you will be locked in at that wholesale pricing when you buy a silver package or above. So whoever invited you to the call, go back and connect with them, and they will get you all signed up.
Okay, how do I get, how do I contact you for more of your intelligence?
Well, I have YouTube. I have a free YouTube. I'm there every other Wednesday. I speak on that. I also do True Health with Carrie every Wednesday at 12:30 Central Time. And then if you're looking to have, one of the practitioners do a consult for you, you're always welcome to contact our clinic as well. So my clinic is wisewellness.net. And if you go there, my assistant will get you connected with our community and our field of practitioners.
The address again was?
Wisewellness.net. I just put it in the chat for you. And then,
Wise Wellness. Okay.
Wisewellness.net. And then my True Health with Carrie are Wednesday at 12:30. And that is the link for that in the chat as well. There's a link in a
12:30 on which day?
Wednesdays.
And YouTube?
So Wednesday, I'm live on Zoom just like this, and I just answer very specific health questions with what I think you need to do. And it's like more, okay, add this into your protocol or change this, and we'll send you the links you need to sign up or to purchase. And then if you need deeper support, you need a practitioner support, we will connect you in with our clinic.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time right up front. And Gary is the one that from Florida that gave me this Zoom number.
Amazing. So connect with Gary, and Gary will get you all signed up.
Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. All right, everybody. Is there any, let me just close this real quick. We've got some massages going on soon. So any other questions before we pop off? So practitioners, students that are here, I will be sending an email follow-up with a form to fill out, just the information that we need from you to help you get started. We recommend that if you're coming in as a customer, you'll want at least the silver package. The silver package will give you the wholesale pricing, and it'll be under the join now option. The gold package will allow you to share, build a team, and earn commission in return as well. So the gold or above is what you want if you want to share with others. So I will send all of that out. I came in at the diamond package because I sold them all right away and it's the best for wholesale. So I will send out a chart and a sheet of what's included, and then you can email the Institute back with what package you want, your billing information, all that jazz, and we will get you placed appropriately. Now, if I am not the person that invited you to this call and you are connected to somebody else, please connect with them, and you're welcome to sign up with them. I just want to make sure that everybody gets put to the right place and the right person. So you can email the Institute back. We know, I know who isn't able to be signed up directly to me. So my upline, Johnny, will actually be supporting all of the other signups. So you can just email the Institute and we will put you in the right place. All right, I will take Camille, your question.
Thanks, Carrie. Yeah, I have a guest on the call and I just wanted to address her question. So I'm just going to hop in the chat really quick and find it. It's about ulcerative colitis and inflammation in the body in regards to autoimmune. And she was also curious about the ion patch relieving pain. Is that something that you can touch on real quick?
Sure. Well, I will say this first and foremost, the patches work, but if you don't make changes to get rid of the environment, they're going to be fighting an uphill battle. So whenever we're having chronic pain or any sort of inflammatory responses or Crohn's or IBS, we are dealing with a parasite overload in the body. So you'll want to work on that. And you're well educated in this, Camille, to help her. But if I was dealing with that, I would be focusing on probably glutathione. X39 would be my focus because X39 encompasses all of them, and the glutathione is going to help with those detox pathways. Obviously, that's struggling a bit, but with pain, you could do Eon or Ice, the Ice Wave patch, either one. Okay, awesome. Okay. Yes, the Eon patch works wonders. It also, what I really love about the Eon patch is it really helps regulate the nervous system. So if your body's stuck in fight or flight, it kind of starts to get you into that more parasympathetic, sympathetic balance. I have noticed, since I'm actually wearing mine on the back behind my ear here, and I've noticed a difference since I started wearing the Eon. I love it. And I personally wear X39, X49 and glutathione right now. And then I wear the Eon usually at night. Today I'm not wearing glutathione, so I'm wearing Eon. So I kind of alternate. Veronique.
I have a guest here and she's asking if the patches would help with scar tissue calcification and to regenerate the nerves.
So with scar tissue, obviously we can't make any scientific claims at all. You know, we don't know if it's going to repair scar tissue, but if you look up GHK copper peptide, it already talks about it strengthens the collagen of the skin and the elastin and repairs the nerves. Right. So I'm going to say, yes, it's going to be highly helpful in the body. Scar tissue can build for multiple reasons. It can be for, adhesions, surgery. Those are things that the body will build. Scar tissue continues to build for up to 2 years in the body after a trauma. So you can do castor oil packing on scar tissue to help break that down. In addition to the patches, a healthy diet, and then working in hydration as well. I think will be a really good protocol. But the body also doesn't enjoy scar tissue. So the body will start to break it down once the communication pathways are repaired and the body is not in a state where it needs the tissue, the scar tissue, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. And the X39 would be enough, or would you recommend the X49 as well?
I think I would start with X39. I mean, if it's in their budget to do X39 and X49, I like to layer the patches. The X49 will amplify the X39's effects by 3x.
Yeah,
And
okay.
we're working on that performance and connective tissue repair.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Chantel.
Hello. I had heard that the AEON specifically helps with inflammation as well. Is that correct?
Correct. Right, because your responses in the body when you're in fight or flight generally is an inflammatory response. So as it starts to regulate the response and mediate the body, then you start to bring the inflammation down.
Okay, and then I know myself included, there's some people who, because I was doing the aloe vera patches at night for the skin at one point and the facial line, and I couldn't sleep wearing those at night. And so I'm wondering how you guys have been talking about doing the AEON at night. Is that going to be, do you have that issue or?
I have not had that issue not sleeping at night, but you could play with it and maybe you do the aloe vera during the day and the EON at night, you know, because it is really working with that regulation of your nervous system. So you could be switched. There's nervous system switching, you know, I don't know. Do you feel tired during the day?
No, not really.
Okay. Yeah. So then I would just play with it and maybe your body could be acclimating to frequency as well. And some people are more sensitive to frequency. So maybe wearing your patches for less than 12 hours during the day. And you know, do you notice any issue if you don't wear it at all? If you wear a patch all day, do you sleep fine at night?
Well, this was in the beginning, so I don't necessarily have, but I stopped using the aloe vera patch. So I do use X39, X49, and the AEON during the day, and I seem to sleep fine at night. I haven't tried using the AEON at night because I actually didn't know that, but so it did improve after the first couple of weeks.
Okay. I would say
And
try
then,
then see if it's still an issue, then you can flip the order.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Beautiful. Yeah. So Alyssa, that's what we were saying. Breaking up scar tissue, calcification, regenerating nerves. Yep. Okay. That was well ago. We answered that. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to get this email out. Several of you students are going to meet with you momentarily. I'll be emailing you for the rest of your exam. And I appreciate all of your time. Go share this with everybody. It's really amazing. And what an easy solution, especially for people that, you know, aren't necessarily living the regenerative lifestyle. The fact that they can have a resource to regenerate their stem cells was such an easy solution. It's a sticker, right? We essentially are putting the patch on for 12 hours and making sure we're drinking plenty of water. So thank you for your time. I hope you guys enjoyed David's chat, and I will see you all very soon.
Thank you, Carrie.
You're welcome. Bye.